Hello to all our Grade 10 Business Studies learners and welcome to our lesson where we are going to look at the interrelationship between the business environments and specifically at some practice and application questions. So let's begin with our practice questions. Our first practice question asks, discuss the interrelationship between the various business functions. Now if you can remember, our business functions is of course our administrative, financial, general management, purchasing, etc. Those 8 functions. So how are we going to discuss the relationship between the business functions? Firstly, we are going to say that the general management function will always consult the administration function for relevant information. Remember, the general management function will get the information from admin function to make their decisions. We can also say that the general management function coordinates all of the other functions in the business. And it also constantly seeks information and advice from all of the departmental heads to make decisions and develop strategies for the business. So here we can see what the relationship is between the various business functions. Let's take a look at question 2. Briefly explain the interrelationship between the business and specifically their supplier. Okay, so briefly explain means you're going to discuss it, but not as extensively as you would usually do. So let's take a look at the relationship between the business and its suppliers. Remember, the business depends on the suppliers for their raw materials. So when we don't get raw materials from our suppliers, we don't have anything to produce our products with. So without the raw materials from our suppliers, the business cannot produce any goods or services. So we must then identify, or the business rather, a reliable supplier. So the business must identify a reliable supplier so that they can be assured that all the supplies and raw materials will be delivered constantly. So there we have it. We have discussed the relationship between the business and the suppliers. So let's take a look at question 3. Question 3 asks, describe. Now describe means you have to answer in full sentences. What must be described? We must describe the interrelationship between the business and specifically its competitors. So remember, our competitors are any business that delivers the same or similar products and services as we do. So what must we as a business do? The business must usually study the activities of the competitors. We want to know what the competitors are doing. So we want to take a look at their pricing strategies. If they are having a lower prices or a sale, we want to compete with that. So maybe we'll lower our prices or have a sale. We must also then devise strategies so that we can provide goods or services better than our competitors. Or remember, we want to gain always a competitive advantage where we have a product or a price that is better than our competitors. So that is our relationship, or rather the business's relationship with the competitors, where we want to know what they are doing so we can then also have a strategy to stay competitive with our competitors. Okay, then our last question. Briefly explain. So you're going to explain not as extensively as maybe it says discuss. So in this case, briefly explain the interrelationship between the micro, the market, and the macro environment. So the easiest way to discuss this relationship will be to use an example. All right. So we, for example, then, we'll just state, let me just finish this quickly, take that out of the way. Changes in the macro environment may affect the microenvironment, which may then affect the market environment. So that's the short explanation. But what does it mean? So now here we are going to use our example. For example, an increase in the interest rate may lead to an increase in the production costs and increase in the prices of our goods and service, which then will turn a decrease in consumer spending. Let me just fix that, a decrease in consumer spending. So we are going to use an example when discussing this relationship. So we're going to discuss and explain that if our interest rates are increased, that means we have more expenses, or our production cost is going to increase, which means our products might be produced at a higher cost, which means our consumers are going to have to pay a higher price for our products. All right, we can also explain it like this. Changes in the market environment may affect the microenvironment. And again, we are going to use an example. So here we are going to focus on new competitors. If there's a new competitor entering the market, it might force the business to decrease their prices. Let me just go back quickly there. There you have it. So we have discussed the interrelationship between the micro, the market, and the macro environment. And as I said earlier, the easiest way to do this, oh, my tongue is twisting. The easiest way to do this is by using an example. All right, so that's it for our practice questions. Before we continue to our applications questions, let's just go for a short break.